Previously on The Great Game. I lost the windbreaker on my microphone. You know, that's just a minor thing, but it really does upset me while editing. Anyways, the city of Skopje has fallen to Ukrainian forces. The former Yugoslav city is now under the Ukrainian banner, worshipping President Volodymyr Zelensky, or whatever you do with presidents who are just that good at their jobs. I wouldn't know. I'm an American. But that was not all that happened. No. You see, there was more drama as we saw the Karakitai bombard and eventually capture the city of Nahavan from Afsharid Persian forces. This is another devastating blow to the Afsharids, who have not been on their game since the beginning of the game. Let's move on. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Great Game. We pick up where we left off, but before I begin, I want to say please support this series by leaving a like, comment, and subscribing down below. Moving on, we see that in North America, the formerly Comanche city of Jupe is looking to regain their Comanche area colors and rejoin their native union under Iron Jacket. We also see that the Shawnee are still facing a tough time in their defensive war against all fronts: American, Shoshone, Comanche, and in some ways it was even the Aztec front, but I believe that one has now closed. I'm not 100% sure. It's been a while since I've recorded this video, so we'll see. Over in Europe, we see that the Karelians are still fighting against the Soviet Union, as they have been for 5,000 fucking years at this point. Let's face it, it's been going on a while. Also, you might have noticed this episode is a bit shorter in length. I have been changing how the episodes are formatted, so you won't be getting the end cards anymore because, frankly, nobody was watching them as much as I really liked having them and how they gave information on each civilization. They take up too much time to make and edit in, and they also just were not... The viewership drops right at the end of all the narrated content, and nobody was watching them. As we move on to the next scene, we can see that Yemen is still engaged in their proxy war with Nigeria against Buganda. I call it a proxy war because really that's how I view it. I don't think Yemen will be able to take any city, not even Azigo right up there on the Horn of Africa. But, as always, I like to show this content because you never know what could happen. The Achaemenids are still at war with both Vijayanagara and the Afsharid forces. However, I don't see too much happening within this scene just yet. We did see the fall of Nahavand in the previous episode to the north. Nahavan was a formerly Afsharid city, and is now Karakitai. Moving on to the next scene, we see that England is pushing all their naval forces to the south to try and take the Portuguese city of Gaia. This will be a very valuable gain for England if they can pull this off, as it guarantees them a city on the mainland so long as they do not raise it. They have been trying to look for cities on the mainland previously, and they did try to take in the North Sea some of the Prussian colonies in Scandinavia. Henry VIII is making some real plays here, I think. If they can take the city of Gaia, that opens up a major front where they can actually invade Aquitaine as well, granting them a major route to mainland expansion. As we move on to the next scene, the citizens of Jupe, once proud Comanche citizens, are now quite despondent. However, it is this year, the 300 BC, that we see Comanche reclaim the city of Jupe for Comancheria. Hurrah! Let's move on. In Central Asia, the Karakitai maintain their control over the former Afsharid city of Nahavan. This, of course, is a major gain for the Karakitai, having gained a new city, of course. And further, we see that Mongolia under Tsakyagina Victorij is facing a major siege from the Yakuts near their settlement of Morong. In this scene, we get a good look at Bangladesh and their inland settlements near the Tibetan Plateau. These can be some major defensive territories for them to hold and produce a strong army base at. However, only time will tell if they're able to make proper use of it. Moving on, we see that in Africa, Mali is launching a large-scale invasion force towards the Alawite Moroccan territories. Of course, Alawite Morocco is still under a very heavy invasion from Carthage, who is now fielding their unique unit, the African Forest Elephant. I sure hope those of you watching this are familiar with Hannibal, for he was very known for his usage of elephants, and particularly his skill at mountain, or I guess you could say alpine warfare. Carthage, of course, is led by Hannibal in this, but Morocco, despite being a very famous name, you might not know of Ismail ibn Sharif, and this is one of the tragic things you might not know about world history, for a casual audience at least. I'm not saying you personally, of course, but a general audience might not know these figures I am presenting in this story. Ismail ibn Sharif was a very powerful military ruler of Morocco, and one of the most prodigious fathers of all time, having over 100 children. I have been looking for an exact number on how many they had. I cannot find an exact number, but it seems like they had over 500 concubines. So, it was a lot of kids. I did a quick Google search, and it seems there were more than 800 confirmed biological children of Ismail ibn Sharif. Holy shit, dude. Maybe they should have invented Trojans. Of course, the Trojans were actually in Anatolia and not Morocco, but moving aside, we see that the Shani are attempting desperately to retake the city of Jupe to no success. It's really tough for me because I do feel a bit bad for Tecumseh. Tecumseh is a very strong leader in Shawnee culture, of course, but also historically they were monumental for indigenous peoples as a whole, having confederated many different tribes in a resistance against, first off, colonialism, of course, but it was also a religious movement in a sense. His brother was a great prophet as well. Despite being first in the turn order and being the first leader to appear on a title card on the Great Game episodes, we might see another first for Tecumseh as the first civilization to be eliminated. Of course, Karelia is also looking pretty rough right now. We don't know. Karelia could be eliminated by the Soviet Union at any point in time if the Soviet Union actually commits a full offensive force to it and doesn't just try whittling away their soldiers at the front lines. Speaking of front lines, we can see that Ukraine and their newly claimed city of Skopje, yes, Skopje is officially Ukrainian now, as the peace deal has been formalized between Josip Broz Tito of Yugoslavia and President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. I always love the dynamics that come from the mix of different histories, cultures, and civilizations that feature in these royales. But I was not the one to do it first, and I want to clarify this. This series was inspired by the Civ Battle Royale Mark II on Reddit, right? And fairly soon, we are going to see the Civ Battle Royale X series Season 5 coming to Reddit soon. If you want to check that out, a link to the Civ Battle Royale subreddit will be linked in the description below. Please check them out. I highly recommend the series, and I have a great respect for my friend Koya, who helped both develop the Great Game in concept and also developed every season of the Civ Battle Royale X series since I believe Season 3. Moving on, we will, in fact, in this very scene you are watching right now, see the Portuguese city of Gaia fall to England under Henry VIII. Honestly, it's kind of weird to say, but I'm kind of rooting for England here. They're doing a very impressive job in this game. What can I say? The Umayyad Caliphate under Al-Walid I has declared war on Sultan Orhan of the Ottomans. This brings us out of a bit of a lull we had where we were seeing a bunch of peace deals off in the far right of the screen. You can see that we had the Karakitai make peace with the Afsharids. You see Mongolia made peace with the Yakuts, and of course Yugoslavia made peace with the Soviet Union. We continue to get a glimpse at Bangladesh and their progressing war against the Mughals, as the city of Multan is facing a strong Bangladeshi siege to the south of Dhaka and Chittagong. Let's expand on the war with the Ottomans that the Umayyads have declared. We know for a fact that Ukraine is still at war with the Ottomans as seen here, but we do not know if the Umayyads will be able to take any city despite the Ottomans' defenses having been worn very thin. The big advantage that the Ottomans have right now is that Anatolia has a variety of natural defenses. It has mountains, hills, and even a little bit of forests. At most, I could see the Umayyads potentially taking the city of Bursa, but I can't see them progressing too far on to, let's say, Sokut. Let's move on to review the Shani and the variety of defenses they have around their cities. Now, the Shani do have some defenses still, but I also want to point this out because this has been something that I've heard in a lot of discussions. The Shoshone are believed to be a bit overpowered. And one of the things I want to bring up is that one of their abilities that I believe was making them overpowered was actually removed for the great game. You see, it just wasn't working and it was causing a bunch of crashes. And normally I don't bring up specific civs and their issues, but this is one I want to address because there are concerns of balance. And so the Shoshone have basically the same chance as other civs. They only really have a slight material advantage in some regards, but I don't believe they're overpowered necessarily. I think they're just kind of good. And speaking of being good at the game, the Achaemenids move a large force towards the Afsharid capital of Mashhad. I bet you didn't think I was going to be able to wrap it around there, did you? But let's move on to see that the English, now with their settlement of Gaia captured from the Portuguese, they can move forward onto the city of Porto and potentially damage or even take that city as well. That is why Gaia is such a strategic gain for the English. It leads them to a lot of potential future conquests. Now, we do have a bit of a lull in the action. There is going to be a scene coming up where Carthage is moving forward into Moroccan territory, which they've been doing for quite a while, so we've sort of seen that before. They still haven't gotten any damage into any of the Moroccan cities. So, I'm going to use this time to ask my usual questions for the audience, right? I've been doing sort of these breakaways from the game to do narration stuff and just sort of engage with the audience. And I'm not sure if that gets annoying at times, particularly because I know a lot of people might want to stay focused on the game, which I do, of course. I review the scenes in full. For instance, right here, we see that the Achaemenids are trying to march. Well, this is actually the Afsharid defense of Mashhad, but the Achaemenids are still trying to march on towards Mashhad. With that out of the way, the question I want to ask is, what sort of narration do you like best in this series? Do you prefer sort of the on-topic sort of martial and war analysis discussion, or do you prefer the tangents of me just sort of spiffing around, bringing up the game when it becomes relevant, and just sort of treating it like a podcast in a way? I ask these questions mainly because they help me focus on what makes the series better. This series has undergone a lot of development, right? There used to be shorter episodes, and Even the first episode had sort of like this animatic intro that I was planning to reuse for future episodes that I just never did. Never. But hey, it was a nice animation. I did that myself. At least I think it was a nice animation. Let's move on to the actual contents of the game to see that the Shawnee are still trying to push to reclaim the city of Jupe from the Comanche, but of course it doesn't seem likely. They only have one archer really to even push on, and archers cannot take cities. They cannot capture enemy cities because they are not melee units. As we come to the next scene, we can see the Swedes still at war with Karelia. They have a new settler right near the city of Sigtuna to the south, in the bottom left-hand side of the screen. Excuse me, the top left-hand side of the screen. They could potentially settle in Finland proper, and that would prove to be a great staging ground for future invasions of Karelia or even into mainland Europe, with the Soviet Union, of course, progressing in their own invasion of Karelia as well. And yes, I do want to point out, it's been a while since I've talked about the Swedes. There's been a huge focus on Karelia and the Soviet Union. There are a lot of civilizations I have not really been covering details about because they haven't really been relevant yet. We are still very much in the early game stages of the Royale. And as things progress, every civilization will get a chance to shine. That's one of the beautiful things about the format. They might not do amazing in every case, but they will all get their time in the spotlight one way or another. Moving on, we can see that the Achaemenids are pushing forward towards the city of Mashhad, finally entering their borders, and they do have some nice ranged units to besiege the city and whittle it down for a melee unit to potentially take. It doesn't seem likely, but they might. Over in Europe, we can see that England is still fortifying their English Armada, but they are also still making progress in their war with Portugal as they start to besiege the city of Porto. Porto is still in the green, but I do want to say how tremendous it is that they actually got a city on the mainland. Island civilizations are at a tremendous deficit in terms of land, material resources, all that. So seeing that they've gotten an actual city conquered on the mainland is huge. That could really bring England into a competitive spot. Let's set the scene. The year is 325 BC. It is the city of Maknesh in Morocco. Ismail bin Sharif is faced with the absolute devastation, desolation, and destruction of his growing state. He sees these war elephants coming in from the east against the city of Marrakesh, and to the south, of course, are the Malian forces banging on his front fucking door. In his study, Ismail bin Sharif is penning 1,000 letters, each one addressed to his many, many children, both legitimate and illegitimate, expressing his sorrow for not having written them sooner, and his grief over the destruction of his empire. Speaking of civilizations about to be dead, we see the Afsharids facing a new siege against their capital of Mashhad, but they are not looking too great right now. They have 4 cities, which is not a bad number, but at this point in the game, everyone's sort of expanding way more than that. And let's face it, if they do lose Mashhad, their remaining cities aren't that great. Shiraz does have Mount Kailash, but that's about it, really. Sorry if I'm a bit quiet, by the way. I'm still trying to get used to this sort of new mic sensitivity because the windbreaker on the microphone is gone. It just isn't there anymore. It's a very tragic loss. We mourn the death of my microphone's windbreaker, and honestly, it's sad to see it go, but I lost it during my vacation, which I had a very lovely time. Thank you for asking about it, everyone. But regardless, we see the Shoshone with their ever-expanding empire. They basically take over most of the Great Plains, which is fairly in line with their behavior in a lot of other AI games. But they are a tremendous threat, not only to the Shawnee, but to everyone else in North America. However, It remains to be seen if they will be the victor in the fight for domination over the Great Plains and over North America as a whole. I've sort of been declining to comment on the Karelian War because we've seen a lot of it before, right? Karelia is still resisting, holding the line against the Soviet Union and the Swedes. Some of it has changed, of course. The Swedes have reinforced their front lines near Västerås, but we have not really seen too much of a change in the front lines for quite some time. That said, action is action, and who can deny they enjoy watching a little bit of bloodshed at least. While we come to the next scene and see that, of course, the Persian Civil War is still ongoing, we're seeing the Achaemenids launching their offensive against the Afsharids. I almost said the Achaemenids again. That would not have been correct. You see, I don't believe the Achaemenids are at war with themselves. We do see two peace deals off to the side, with Yemen and Buganda making peace, which is very notable, because that means there's no gains made in that war, but now Buganda is only at war with Nigeria. Of course, the Achaemenids also made peace with Ukraine. I also want to take this time, as we approach the end of the episode, to thank you guys so much for the love and support you've shown this series. Even after a long break, I at least got quite a few views on the most recent episode, not uploading at the most ideal time, and just sort of not expecting much of anything, really. I still got quite a few views, and I was very happy about that. If you want to continue showing your support for this series, please be sure to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. Leaving a like and commenting helps boost this video's, let's say, takeoff speed, right? It gives it that push onto the front page of everyone's recommended list. You know how YouTube always recommends those shitty videos? Well, I'm the shitty video we want to recommend here. So, please, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe so I can continue making this series and continue supporting my passions in this YouTube channel. Do you think Ismail Ibn Sharav has to pay a lot of child support? I do. Perhaps that's why he's being bombarded by Carthaginians and Malians. Carthage is approaching the city of Marrakesh to the east, and the Malians are approaching Maknesh and Fez to the west. This is a battle over who gets Morocco, really. I do not think the Alawites have much of a way out of this, but only time can tell, really. So I want to give a bit of behind the scenes context because it'll be very funny for you guys at home. The headphones I am recording with are those cat ear headphones you see sometimes at like GameStop or Best Buy or whatever, maybe on Amazon. And they are pink and have cat ears like I had said. I look ridiculous while recording this, but this is the best headset I have at the moment in time. Of course, this headset was a gift from my friends, and I've been recording the entirety of the series thus far with this headset. But I just think it adds a little bit of magic to the series to be recording it all with the pink cat ear headphones. I think it's funny. We come now to the penultimate scene of the episode to see the Umayyads are still at war with the Ottomans. They haven't made too much progress, but we do see that they are making some progress, and they have a very intimidating army right near Bursa. I'm not 100% sure that they can take the city because of the really good natural defenses it has, honestly. A mountain to the north on the side of the Umayyads is very imposing. With all that out of the way, we're at the final scene of the episode. We can see the Shawnee resistance, and I want to thank you so much, everyone, for watching. As I am going to be going back to college very soon, I'm not 100% sure that my scheduling will be perfect, but I am going to try and maintain a consistent pace with this series. It won't be perfect, but I am doing my best to make sure you will get episodes, and if I'm not able to release an episode that week, maybe I'll release some other form of content like a stream or whatever. All that out of the way, my name is Kazia, signing off. Bye-bye!